Hey guys, and welcome back to the course. In this video, we're going to spawn a juicy little player character in our game. So we've gone ahead and made a simple player character. You can either make your own art or just use a placeholder square for now. Now we're going to add to him the photon view component. You need this component on any object which gets spawned on the network. Like this, when we will instantiate this player character, every other player will see that character on their respective machines. Let's now go ahead and make a resources folder. Once it's been created, we can drag and drop the player to turn them into a prefab. Any game object that is spawned onto the server, and so that will be synced to all other players, must come from a folder named exactly resources, which is why we didn't call this folder prefabs like we usually do. So to quickly recap, to be able to spawn an object on the server, we need the object to have a photon view component attached to it, as well as be turned into a prefab inside of a folder called resources. Alright, so in the game scene, we'll create an empty game object called spawn players. Let's also go ahead and create a new C# script called spawn players. Once it's been created, we could go ahead and drag and drop this script onto our newly created game object. Let's start off by creating a public game object variable called player that, you guessed it, will reference our player prefab. Then we want to spawn in our player at a random position in the game. To do so, I'll create 4 public float variables, min_x, min_y, max_x, and max_y, which we'll be using to set the boundaries of our game world in which the player can be spawned in. Inside the start function, we'll make a vector2 variable called random position and set that equal to a new vector2 with random x and y coordinates. So for the x coordinates, we're taking a random number between min_x and max_x, and for the y coordinates, we're generating a random number between our min_y and max_y variables. Then to spawn the player, we need the photon pan namespace like usual. Once that's been added, we can type photonnetwork.instantiate to instantiate the player character on the server instead of just the basic instantiate function. For the first parameter, we must specify the name of the game object inside the resources folder which we would like to spawn. So in this case, the player.name. Secondly, the position, so random position. And finally, quaternion.identity for no rotation. It's easy as that. So let's quickly recap. When we play our game, first thing that happens is that we get connected to the server in our loading scene. Then we go ahead and create a room. Once we land in our game scene, this script will run its start function, and inside of it, we are first of all calculating a random position in our game world, and then we are instantiating on the network our player prefab at that random position. Alright, so with this script nicely saved, we can head over back to Unity. Let's drag and drop the player inside this empty slot in the inspector. And then let's drag and drop the player prefab inside the scene and move him to the top boundary of the map. Like that, we can have a look at his y position value, copy it, and then paste it for the max y variable. Then just repeat this process 3 more times for the bottom, the left, and the right edges of the map. And then delete him from the scene. We can now build our game by pressing Ctrl B or Command B if you're on a Mac, and let's test it out. So once we get connected to our server, we can go ahead and create a room called test on this builds. And once you hit the create button, you'll see that we get transitioned to the game scene and our player character gets instantiated at a random position. Let's now join the test group on this build of the game, and you'll see that our second player character gets spawned, then we can see both of them on our 2 instances of our game. This is awesome. So like we already talked about, if you just use the normal instantiate function like we're used to do when making single player games, each player will only be able to see their own player character and not the other player's one. But because we're using the photonnetwork.instantiate function, that we have got the photon view components on the player character and that we have turned them into a prefab inside of the resources folder, we are able to spawn him in correctly on the server so that every player can see him. Alright, great work guys, we're starting to make some really nice progress on this first multiplayer game. In the next video, we'll get our player characters moving around in our worlds. I'll see you then, cheers!